Welcome to the show. I'm Danny Cannell in for Jason Whitlock, and I'm going to tell you why, despite Alabama's win last night, the playoff committee still didn't get it right.
Oh, and I'm Colin Cowherd, and I'll tell you why last night actually helped Baker Mayfield's NFL prospects. Speak for yourself starts right now. And I'm not even a Baker Mayfield fan.
No, you're not. You're a hater.
I am kind of a hater.
A hater.
Hello, and welcome to the show. We're joined today by Fox College football analyst Joel Klatt and longtime NFL college coach and NFL coach Charlie Weis. Let's start in Pasadena, where we saw an epic Rose Bowl. It doesn't even do it justice. The showdown between Georgia and Oklahoma last night. The Sooners started hot, putting up 31 in the first half, but Georgia comes roaring back, running roughshod over Oklahoma and completing a 17-point comeback to take the win in double overtime. Colin, were you more impressed with Georgia or disappointed in Oklahoma last night?
I was really disappointed in Oklahoma. Listen, there's two things Oklahoma had they may never be able to duplicate, even Oklahoma. Baker Mayfield. You may never get a college quarterback that good. And that O-line for Oklahoma is, outside of Bama, that's a bunch of NFL guys. And you had a 4th and 1 in overtime. And you said, you know what, I'm going to put my defense back on the field. Like, you went into that game as a coaching staff. Oklahoma knew they're going to run the ball on us. Like, we're looking at tape here. We're professional coaches. But you also went into that game thinking you had to make this decision as a staff a month before. Guys, our O-line's better than theirs. Our quarterback's better than theirs. We got good receivers. If it's 4th and close, we're going to let our offense control our future. I thought from that goofy kick at the end of the half to going for a field goal, you put the game in your kicking team and your defense. You had the best offensive line on the field and the best quarterback. When I looked at the box score this morning, it told me Oklahoma won.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
They won every key thing. Time of possession, 3rd down, rush. I just don't get it.
I hate to do it when you don't give enough credit to Georgia because they deserve a tremendous amount of credit for the performance they put on. Dominant, running game.
Hold on a second.
All right.
You're an offensive guy.
Yes.
Okay, you've scored 31 points in the first half. I mean, whatever happened to the foot on the throat mentality? Whatever happened to the pedal on the metal? I mean, it's 31 points. You give up a field goal. You're only up 2 scores. You come out in the third quarter and you go for the jugular. You don't play passive. You don't play, okay, well, you know, we got this game under control because your defense the entire year has never stopped anybody.
That's right. I'm so glad you said that.
So I think the third quarter's where the game's really lost. Okay, granted, it was a great fourth quarter, back and forth, and there were a lot of questionable things you talk about. But the third quarter, they got shut out in the third quarter.
I'm so glad you said that because they had 4 possessions in that third quarter that you talked about. And the great teams I've ever played on really put an emphasis on the coming out at halftime. What are you going to do? They had 4 possessions. They ran it the first time of each possession, extremely conservative, didn't get a lot of production, and they had 3 and out, a punt, and an interception. And there was not much innovation. It almost felt to me as if Lincoln Riley, who had a masterful game plan in the first half, had unloaded all the bullets. And it was out there, and it was like, what do we do next? And they called a couple plays that they ran in the first half, but they didn't have anything else to go to.
Hold on, let me cut my paper in half because that's how big it is.
Yeah, he was looking at that play sheet. There was no new plays going to all of a sudden appear on that play sheet. I will say that if you study, and I did Oklahoma 3 times, and so I studied them very in depth, and their offense was incredibly potent really in the first 30, 35 plays of the game. That's where they do most of their damage, if not all of their damage. And then after that, if you saw them play during the course of the year, they gave up double-digit leads several different times because the defense wasn't great, and all of a sudden the third quarter they would start to slow down. There was no foot on the gas mentality, and that's what I thought ultimately at the end of the day, I felt like they lost their foundational principles. There were no longer creativity in the third quarter. There wasn't any tempo, guys. The tempo in the first quarter was remarkable. Georgia could not keep up. They could not keep up. They couldn't make adjustments on the fly. And because of that, you had the hybrid players like Dimitri Flowers making a lot of plays. You had zone coverage being played because they have to be vanilla with that tempo. And they lost that in the second half. That and some really questionable individual play calls late in the game, in particular in the first overtime. That's what ultimately got Oklahoma beat. Listen, I think both can be true. Back to the original question. Georgia played a great game. They deserve a lot of credit. And Oklahoma has got to be sick to their stomachs because the game was right there for them to win.
Charlie, you've told me this before. I've learned this from you, that when you go into a game, especially a big game, that you make a decision on Monday, not game week, of, okay, if we get into overtime, so you set sort of an intellectual tempo.
Yeah, those things aren't, people think they happen like they're game day adjustments. They're not game day adjustments. You've talked about them long before that. If this happens, this is what we're doing.
So to my point, if this Oklahoma staff is as good as I think it is, you didn't tell me they sat down and said, listen, if it goes to overtime, we're going to rely on our defense.
Right.
Like, to me, it's like that offensive line, to beat an SEC team, you got to be good up front, Danny.
Yep.
That Oklahoma offensive line is legit.
To have 3 runs, not put the ball in the hands of the best player in college football once, to give him a chance
Touchdown
to make
wins
a play. Touchdown wins it. But the first time I heard you say that about the 4th down, I was sitting there in the end zone, right on the field, watching the game unfold. And I'm looking around at the people I was watching the game with, and I looked at Lincoln Riley and I said, does he have the fortitude to go for it? I didn't use the word fortitude. I said something else.
Yeah.
But he did not have it. But looking back on it, I think he's going to regret not going for it in that situation. It felt like the axiom where if you're the road team, you go for it. You go for 2. You go for the win. Because they very much felt like the road team, and they could have dictated the game with what they do best. And
that game, the longer it got extended, the more chance Georgia was going to have
That's
to win.
how
Because they were better in the second half.
And I also felt...
And so they needed to go for the win. Now,
they were deeper.
They were deeper, and they were faster. They were tackling better. Let me just, for a moment, if you will, think back to 2005. USC is playing Texas in the Rose Bowl, right? Iconic game, shots, Vince Young, 4th down, confetti. Imagine for a moment that Texas, on a critical play late, gave the ball to a player named Michael Houston. Do you know who Michael Houston is?
He's a running back who carried it 3 times.
He was a running back who carried it 3 times for Texas on the entire year. On 3rd and 2, touchdown wins it. They gave the ball to Jordan Smallwood on a sniffer back, little short side reverse.
Bad call.
That's his 3rd rush of the year.
I'm not a
like,
coordinator.
guys, what are we doing? I was sitting there like,
a casual fan watched that moment and said, what are they doing?
Hey guys, Jason McIntyre here. Before the show moves along, I wanted to tell you that support for the Speak for Yourself podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. They understand that home plays a big role in your life and family. That's why they created Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Mortgage gives you the confidence you need when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. It's simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. Whether you're looking to buy your first home or your 10th, with Rocket Mortgage you get a transparent online process that gives you the confidence to make an informed decision. It's convenient. Our trusted partners allow you to share your financial information with Rocket Mortgage at the touch of a button. And in addition to getting a real mortgage approval in minutes, you can even adjust the rate and length of your loan in real time to make sure you're getting the right solution for you. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Apply simply. Understand fully. Mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/speak. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Welcome back. Joe Klatt, Charlie Weiss are here. Let's return to the Rose Bowl. Wild scene last night. Baker Mayfield was his usual cocky self, warming up in the opponent's end zone before the game, getting caught on camera saying, "It's over," during the first quarter. Obviously it wasn't. With Georgia coming back to win a thrilling double overtime game and prompting Georgia linebacker Davin Bellamy to offer Baker some unsolicited advice.
What changed in the second half?
Humble yourself. Humble yourself.
All I'm saying is humble yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, all the flamboyancy, that's like I carry myself the same way. But humble yourself, man.
Did that fuel you guys when he's doing it? Yeah.
Most definitely. Our wide receivers came back and told us how they was running their routes on air, before we went out there, and he was all in their line. You know what I mean? Just humble yourself, man.
Baker, you're an emotional guy. When you're going after the game, you congratulate some of their players, and some of their other guys are yelling at you. I mean, are you hearing that, or is it just kind of like...
Yeah, but they can say what they want. They won the game. That's just how it is.
All right, Danny, does Baker need to humble himself to succeed in the NFL?
Absolutely not. He needs to be true to himself, and this is who he is. He plays with this tremendous confidence, and as much criticism as he gets for his cockiness, all I hear him talk about in his press conference are his teammates, his offensive line, his wide receivers, his head coach, the job that everybody does around him that helps him do his job. the last thing you would want him to do once you get him into your NFL team is ask him to change the way he operates, because he thrives off of that back and forth. He thrives off the trash talk. He thrives when defenses challenge him and say, you can't move the ball on us. After his interception, when he threw the interception, he made the tackle that kind of saved the touchdown. He was right there, and the Georgia players came over and bumped him. And that was like a moment where he kind of woke up and got out of that funk that they were in the third quarter. I think he uses those moments to motivate him and get him going. Now, does he need to come in the NFL and wave a flag around and say, hey, I'm the best thing ever? Clearly not, and I don't think he will. But to ask him to change who he is, I think that'd be crazy if you're an NFL team.
Depending on who he's playing for, he won't, I can promise you. Right. Because all I could see is the first time he did that, and if I had my hands on him, I don't know if I'd humiliate him in front of the players. Okay, which that's one thing you could do.
Which one are you referring? Which bothers you?
Well, I kind of like humiliate in front of the peers. I like to really do that. You know, you want to really tear somebody down, do it in front of the players. But, you know, in a closed door with a couple of choice words about, you know, play with fire, but don't be an ass.
Right.
I mean, there's a line. I mean, I think part of your job as a coach is to get him to understand where the line is. Like, you go back to the Kansas game, he was prompted in that game. You know, Kansas's players wouldn't shake his hand and stuff. He was prompted, but there should be somebody there saying, we don't do that.
Yeah,
you know, you don't let him go up and down the sideline and let that go. You know, either a fellow teammate, which sometimes in good locker rooms they take care of it, or a coach goes up to you and say, knock it off.
Yeah.
You know.
And there's a line. You're right. And however, there are certain players, regardless of position, that thrive next to that line. And you've coached them, I'm sure, Coach, where
Lawrence.
they have to be there.
How about Lawrence?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. They've got to be there.
He didn't care about that line.
Or else they're not effective, you know, and I think Baker's one of those type of guys. Now, I would say this, part of why his teammates love him is because he's close to that line. Part of why they play so hard for him, and part of why he's there in the first place is for them, because he understands that reciprocal relationship that his energy provides for his team and then their play, in particular on the offensive side. That's why I thought it was so shocking when they went conservative. It was like I was watching a guy bend to someone else's narrative in the second half. That wasn't Oklahoma and Baker Mayfield that I saw in the third quarter. And I think, Danny, you're exactly right. Too many times we see really good college players think that they've got to be something else, whether it's technically or from a human element at the next level, and because of that, they fail. And, you know, Baker's going to have to find that line, where can I go, where can I not go, depending on the organization and the coach, but he needs to be close to that line to be effective.
Guys, he's in a police video. There's a difference between being Aaron Rodgers confident and juvenile.
Well, aren't those two different things, though? Hold on.
Yes.
Because, we're talking about, like, the swashbuckling guy on the field versus, yeah, clearly he can't be getting tackled by the police.
Okay, what I'm saying is Aaron Rodgers is cocky. Johnny Manziel at a nightclub after being, you know, in trouble is juvenile. That's juvenile.
Okay.
You would be embarrassed. I would be if my kid was in that. If my
I don't think anyone's arguing that that's not embarrassing.
That's my problem.
Yeah, but I'm also saying he's a college kid. You know, I'm saying there's a big difference between, I coached half my career in college, half my career in the pros. And the one thing my wife always said is she couldn't stand college because you're dependent on 18 to 23-year-old kids for your livelihood. And it's a different set of issues. You're dealing with family issues when you're coaching in the pros. You're dealing with them growing up when you're dealing with them in college. He's making a mistake. It's a mistake.
Right.
Okay.
You know what I think is a bigger issue rather than his quote-unquote attitude? The fact that he doesn't pull the trigger in tight windows.
I thought he did last night in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, he did in the fourth quarter because he was forced into that. All of a sudden they're down 7 and you got to go, right? But there's an element to his game where he doesn't pull the trigger a lot, in particular intermediate down the middle of the field in tight windows. I think that's more problematic than some sort of attitude narrative.
All I know is this. Name the Hall of Fame quarterback with a police video.
Well, name a Hall of Fame quarterback that was in college when there were police videos available.
Yes, thank you. I'm more worried they didn't run away from the cops in that video. They tackled him. He's supposed to be elusive.
And here's what I'm more worried about. I'm more worried about if I'm calling a play, it's the most important play of the entire year, okay, and It's 3rd and 2. Number 12 from the Patriots, if I'm coaching him, he's going to have the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not giving it to some indiscriminate running back, no disrespect. And every once in a while during the season, you'll have a scheme play where, hey, this is what we're going to do in that situation, and you got something that you know what their defense is going to be. I mean, like a direct snap to the run. I watched it in the Super Bowl last year. 10 years later, after we put it in, they're still running. they're still running the same play, calling it the same, running the same play.
Same fake.
I'm getting 20 texts, and with everyone give me the name of the play and everything like that. But I'm saying 3rd and 2. Put the ball in his hands, okay, and let him either have a run-pass option, do something. Let him either win the game or lose the game.
That's on his coach, and I think that was a coaching mistake last night that we saw.
In New Orleans, where Bama won their 3rd installment of their postseason trilogy against Clemson in last night's Sugar Bowl. Number 4 Bama didn't even make the SEC championship and was the last team into the playoff, but they dominated the top-ranked Tigers on both sides. Now, Danny, did the Crimson Tide prove they deserve to be in this playoff?
Absolutely not. You can't go into the way we do this playoff and look at it in hindsight and say, well, they look like the best team in the country. And they might have been, but why do we reward teams who don't earn their way in there? And the biggest problem with me isn't with Alabama, because I think they're going to go on and win it now. I think they are the best team in the country. But we don't give trophies and we don't give championships based on how you look going into it. Ohio State. I felt like they earned it as the Big Ten champion.
How many games did they lose this year?
Twice. But they won the toughest conference in college football this season. I think the selection should have been between USC and between Ohio State. When you look at it, so this is my...
UCF. Let's go UCF.
Absolutely. When you look at the system, it's not against Alabama. It's more with the system, which I feel is severely flawed. But you look at the way the seeding works.
Yeah, but that's not the criteria.
But in what sport?
The criteria is bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's face it. The criteria is flawed.
Just like the catch rule in the NFL is bad.
That's right.
Okay, but the criteria is the criteria, whatever it is.
That's right. So
as long as you can follow it, they're trying to get the 4 best teams in there.
So why wouldn't you say
watch
Ohio
the game
State
last night?
I watched Ohio State.
Did we watch a different game?
No, but why don't we look at Ohio State and say they deserved a shot because they proved their worth?
No, they got beat by 30.
No, but I'm saying but they got
Iowa, right? Was it Iowa?
By Auburn.
There's a huge problem with just trying to identify the best team. That's very different than having a team earn a championship. Those two things are very different. Okay, if you want to identify the best team, we're going to reward tradition, we're going to reward coaching, we're going to reward recruiting, and that's essentially what has happened. Now, again, my problem is not with Alabama. My problem is with a flawed system. Mike Slive held the playoff hostage at its inception and demanded that we're not going to be a part of it as the SEC unless we say it's the 4 best versus the 4 best conference champs. He wouldn't do it if it was only conference champs. And so everyone else acquiesced, and now we have a playoff where we just reward the 4 best. Imagine for a moment, let's go back in history again. I've already taken you back to 2005. Now let's go back. Let's just give the Vince Lombardi Trophy to the Patriots because we know they were better than the Giants.
Right.
Let's just reward the best team. Well, you're good with that, right, Coach? You're good with that?
Right.
Listen, but again, you got to earn it on the field. It's not a subjective sport. Anyone arguing that subjectivity is good for football is insane.
No, how about a system where...
I agree totally with that comment. But the only way you can really be fair is if you reward each Power 5 conference champion with a spot in the playoffs.
I disagree.
Well, let me finish. Regardless of what the strength of that conference was that year. Because you look at like the NFL. I mean, there's conferences where somebody wins the division with a crummy record. Now, they aren't as good as some of the teams that aren't making it right there. But it just so their conference has to have a champion, so their conference champion goes in, and when they get in, they always have a chance.
My only problem with that is that as soon as we have automatic bids for conference champions, we render the non-conference completely meaningless. And I think that's problematic for our sport.
No, I think you need to have another...
because you can lose all your non-conference games and still win your conference.
Not if you have 3 at-large bids, and we'll get to this later.
No. I'm saying it's those 5 plus 3 more.
An automatic bid for a conference champion renders the non-conference completely meaningless Because you can lose every non-conference game
What about for
and
seeding?
still win your conference.
But you could have seeding
You're
at
telling me
stake?
seeding matters? I just saw Clemson have to play essentially a road game as the number 1 seed.
All right, what about if you have seeding there and you also have first-round bye potentially at stake? You could have that.
How many
come into
games are we
play?
playing? What do you mean first round bye?
No, but if you go to 6 instead of 8 and you give the top 2 seeds.
So now we're just going to move the bench. So we're going to make, rather than teams 5, 6, and 7 being upset, now we're just going to move it to 9, 10, and 11.
How about the fact that the 4th seed, which is supposed to be the last team that creeps in, that's supposed to have the biggest disadvantage, is playing closer to the game than Clemson was, and they had a bye week to get in.
Okay, let me
They
ask
had
you
a-
guys.
a
Let me
huge
ask you
advantage.
guys.
system.
Let me
Yes.
ask you guys. Who's the best coach in college football?
Nick Saban.
Saban.
Okay. Who has the best roster in college football?
Alabama.
The travesty is if they don't get in.
Why?
Right,
Whoa, whoa,
exactly.
whoa, whoa.
Are we supposed to give
The
it
best
based on
coach,
reputation?
the best roster.
We just give it on reputation.
That's a travesty.
Are you serious?
Yes, I am.
You're serious.
A travesty in life is
Oh,
if there's a kid
my
that has
goodness.
the best grades and the best SAT score, and he doesn't get into
No,
Harvard.
that's different. That's
a
different
travesty.
because
totally
that kid
different.
earned it. You're talking about the
Oh,
kid
yeah,
that's like,
Alabama
well,
beat-
hey, he's 6'4" and he's blonde and
Alabama
blue-eyed.
beat everybody by 60 this year.
Not
no,
Auburn.
you're talking
they
about-
didn't beat Auburn by
Oh, they
60.
had one loss. Clemson
But
had
they didn't have
8.
to play a championship game.
But you
I'm
guys
losing
are,
my mind.
You're setting up all these crazy obstacles. Let's just get it right.
Winning your conference is not a crazy obstacle.
No. We all admit it's a flawed system.
Yes.
Pac-12 plays 9 in conference. SEC plays 8. Bama plays Mercer 3 times. We know the system's flawed.
Sure.
We're all so if it's flawed, let's not create obstacles.
Look at
eye
FCS.
test, best coach, best roster.
Look
eye
at,
test is
look
the
at
worst term in
FCS.
sports.
Look at FCS has 16 teams
Yes.
in there. Okay, I don't think you ever can get that academically with a schedule.
Right.
If you're really concerned with kids taking exams and everything, I don't think there's any way you could fit 16 in. But you can fit 8 in.
You have to
Yes.
play a game
The
before
Easily.
unintended consequences
We're gonna get to that all-
of having automatic bids.
A true champion
It
is a great
ruins the regular
consequence.
season of college football, guys. It
All right,
ruins
there's
it.
no doubt there are flaws in the system of college football.
By the way, SEC fans, with you and I on the desk, their minds are
Nuts.
just like
Yeah,
exploding.
but my head was exploding last night. Welcome back. Joel Klatt is back, and we're now joined by the founder of the Big Lead, Jason McIntyre. I told you I dunked on him at the Phoenix, but I also rained threes all over him too, so he's used to it.
He's Michael Jordan, basically.
Yes, let's return to college football, where Alabama will take on Georgia in a all-SEC national championship game Monday night. But both these teams lost to Auburn during the season, and Auburn just lost to undefeated Central Florida in yesterday's Peach Bowl, prompting outgoing UCF coach Scott Frost to complain that the playoff selection process was, quote, unfair. Cowherd, does college football need to expand the playoff?
I'd be okay if it did, but it doesn't need it. The sport's doing fine without it. I'm not a big believer in more. So if you expand the playoff, what you're saying is you'd have an 8th team. This year's 8th team was USC. The last 3 times USC's played a big boy, smoked by Ohio State, smoked by Notre Dame, and smoked by Alabama. You really think they deserve to be in the playoff? I watched every USC snap. They're not good enough. When's the last time you watched college football and thought, that 7th team, they should be number
Exactly
one?
right. It's odd to find a year where the 4th team is
This
good
was-
enough to
this
play.
year was
this year
rare.
is an anomaly in that respect. Plus, I will continue to reiterate this. You will render the regular season virtually meaningless if you grow it to 8 teams, okay? And you can grow the meaningful impact of regular season games and the access to the national championship by just saying you have to win your conference in order to go. If you do that, now all of a sudden the conference championship games are like quarterfinal games. All of a sudden the Iron Bowl is for all the marbles. Now, what we have now is this combination of meaningless yet meaningful, but it's all based on subjectivity. And the only other team sport that uses subjectivity is like cheerleading competitions. So I'm very weirded out by the whole process.
So I'm disappointed in you, Joel, because I think we're on the same page on a lot of things. We're trying to change college football for the better. How can you not view 8 games as the perfect solution? And I would, because you sound like the BCS, the old standard, who came in there and they said That's going to ruin the regular season. We heard that same thing with the BCS. And the regular season now is even better with 4, and I think it would be even better with 8. I think it would matter if you went to 5 conference champs and 3 wild cards. You know who the regular season matters to? Those 3 wild cards, who are going to want to win those games to get a chance if they don't win that conference.
How many losses did Stanford have this year going into the conference championship game?
3 or 4.
3 or 4, right? You don't really know.
Yeah.
Why? Because it was nondescript, because it was 3 or 4.
Right.
So you're saying that if they would have beaten USC, which they were within a hair of doing in that Pac-12 championship game, that they should go and play in the playoff?
Why do we have a problem with that?
I have a huge problem with that because
bounced.
the regular season in college football is the most unique and the most important regular season in all of sport. Not American sport, just
unless
sport.
you're Bama. And you can lose to Auburn in the
and you can
regular
have a
season
pathetic
and
resume and sneak in. Joel, here's my problem. You played Division I college football. So did you, Danny. When the season starts in August and everybody gets to practice, every team should have a shot at winning the national championship. You put it all together. There's something inherently wrong when you show up at practice on the first day and like 97% of the country has no chance of getting to the playoff. I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. You go undefeated, maybe you sneak in with 1 loss. You just have no shot. And to me, something feels wrong about that everybody should have a shot. There should be an even playing field. And as you said, this is all about the elites. Because Alabama, you know, we discussed this.
Sure.
They did not have the resume to get it.
No,
they did not deserve to be there. And now they're going to win the title.
I agree.
And
But you're buying into the mythology. So there's 120 Division I football programs and 4 get in. And you're saying, college basketball, 68 get in. There's 370 programs. Percentage-wise, it's not that far apart. The truth is, there's only 7 teams every year that can win the NCAA tournament. Go look. Kansas is going to win it, or Carolina, or Kentucky.
Yeah, but what are the most memorable runs? George Mason going
Those
to the Final Four,
are the
Butler going back-to-back. People love that.
Time out.
Joel, let me say this. UCF undeniably plays a better brand of football than Alabama right now. Would you not agree with that?
The George Mason run, because George Mason didn't win the title.
Nobody
so UCF's
cares.
run to the Peach Bowl was exactly what George Mason's run in the NCAA tournament was.
It was an exhibition game, Joel.
That's exactly what George Mason was.
You're making, it's a false narrative. Nobody can forget the George Mason run. I forgot it the second it was over. You know
Until
what,
he just mentioned
You know
it.
what people can't forget? Christian Leitner's shot for Duke against Kentucky.
Was a great game.
Vince Young run to the corner of the end zone.
Nobody gives a rip about the VMU.
You don't like underdogs, huh?
Here's the thing. Here's the problem I have. Then
Then
we need to separate UCF and the group of 5 and say you guys have no chance because they really don't have a chance
okay
right
with
now.
that.
But that doesn't make why have them call an FBS program? Why do it? I care about the game of football. I pled with Bill Hancock. He's the most powerful man in college football. He runs the college ball playoff. He was in charge of the BCS. He's in charge of the playoff now. And I begged him. They're not going to do it because they have this 12-year contract. They're only 4 years in. It's going to be there. But ultimately, I think they will do the right thing, which is give more teams an opportunity because it is bad for college football that 3/4 of the country is going to be watching a championship played and none of them have any vested interest. Nobody cares to see a pseudo SEC.
Well, they're not going to be watching, Danny. The ratings are going to tank.
And that will change things.
We're closer to change than you think because, and here's the deal, there's only 5 guys that can really change any of this, and that's the conference commissioners because they're the ones that own this playoff in the first place. It's not Bill Hancock and any of these things. And here's the deal. The reason we have 4 best versus you have to win your conference to go is because Jim Delaney didn't put a flag in the ground when it was first created. Mike Slive said, I'm not signing off. Jim Delaney said it's better to have a playoff than not have a playoff, so he sided with the ACC and the SEC. Guess where Jim Delaney is starting to go now? That the conference champions should have a requirement to get into the playoffs. So now you've got the Big 12, Pac-12, and the Big 10 potentially in a 3-against-2 vote that could change the criteria of this playoff within 3 years. I really think that's a possibility.
All right, to another of yesterday's games, the Outback Bowl. Michigan blew a 19-3 lead, lost to South Carolina. Can't believe it. After a pretty disappointing season, the script says hugely. Let's slow down. It's been swirling around rumors that Jim Harbaugh might be headed back to the NFL, but the coach shot them down after the loss.
Coach, with the opportunities that have opened up today in the NFL, is there any possibility that this is the last game that you coach for Michigan?
No.
Is next year make or break for Harbaugh?
Absolutely. I don't see how you could see it as any other way for a coach who has generated some exceptional attention to his program, where he played. There's a long, rich history that's well documented. Comes in there, makes a great splash, creates a lot of attention, goes down shirtless to the SEC country and hosts a satellite camp there, rattles some cages, gets paid a lot of money, bring some recruits up to Michigan. But the whole country was tired of Jim Harbaugh. You know who that act is wearing thin with? Michigan fans. They're tired of all these storylines that are captivating the national college audience in the offseason, and they want to see some wins. He's 0 for Ohio State, 1-2 versus Michigan State, finished this season with 3 consecutive losses. He doesn't have a signature win this season at all. Next year is huge for Jim Harbaugh. He has to start showing that it was worth it, that his salary's worth it, that all the off-field stuff is worth it, that he can coach this program and get them to where they want to be.
Are we arguing that he can't coach?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we know he can coach.
We better not be arguing.
All right.
So we know he can
Come out of my
coach.
seat.
Right.
But
we've seen him run his course at other programs. We saw him run his course with San Francisco 49ers, and that was a big storyline that follows at Stanford, that there's a 4-5 year window where it's exciting, guys buy into it.
It's got to be different in college, though, because the cycle of the players will end up cycling out of that window.
Yeah, that's why I thought he would have success there. But I think there are some causes for concern, though. Like, he's supposed to be this quarterback expert. He played the position. You know, he had Andrew Luck, supposed to develop quarterbacks. His quarterbacks have been atrocious.
Yeah, the last 2 years, that's
and even
been
Jake
the
Rudock,
position.
his first year was.
And Rudock was good at the end of the season.
Okay, but he inherited a really good Big Ten. This Big Ten was a mess 10 years ago. Penn State's rolling. Wisconsin may have the best staff outside Alabama in the country. When's the last time they had a bad half?
Don't leave out Michigan State.
Yeah. Ohio State. Now Nebraska has the best young hotshot coach.
Yeah. Purdue's coming.
Listen, he inherited a really good conference. He's winning 9 a year. Now, to your point, this is where I agree. I've been really disappointed in his quarterbacks. They make pedestrian sound exciting. I mean, honestly, I watched that quarterback play. I'm like, Jim, you're a rock star. It's a rock star position. But I think Shea Patterson, the Ole Miss transfer, will change that and be the Big Ten's best quarterback next year.
We'll see. You know, and I know that I think there's still some NCAA, you know, as far as
who knows if he's
can
playing.
He play, can he not play, does he have to sit out? So we'll have to wait and see whether he's even eligible to play. I would say this. I think Jim this year got a bad rap because people expected him to win 11 games. Yeah. There was no roster in the country more decimated by the NFL draft than Michigan.
He had 5 returning starters.
And so, actually, I thought they were playing pretty decently, and then the finish was obviously very bad. Now, quarterback play is where it's at. We've all mentioned it. I will just tell you right now, after studying them on film, I did their Wisconsin game, after I did their Ohio State game to close out the year. They get quality quarterback play at all, they're winning 3 or 4 more games. Yep. I mean, it was their defense is right there. And everything is right there.
The thing where I feel like he's going to start catching some heat, and deservedly so, like you talked about losing rosters. Look at Saban. He loses guys every year. Dabo Swinney, he loses guys. The great coaches are able to overcome that, and they recruit well, and they develop guys within their system. It is time for Jim Harbaugh. I just got a text.
Danny, here's where it falls apart.
I got a text from Whitlock. He just told me I need to bring up this graphic.
All right?
Oh, boy.
Because if you look at his record compared to the guy that was before him, it doesn't look that far off.
I am going
This is from Whitlock, all right?
Danny, here's where your argument falls apart.
Put up Hoke's last 3 seasons.
He had 1 good season.
Well,
right?
that's you hope
wins,
the trend. You hope the
But no, Danny, you just mentioned the elites in college football, right?
Yes.
They're the only ones who have a shot. Jim Harbaugh makes Michigan elite. They're in that discussion as long as Jim Harbaugh's there. Rich Rod, Brady Hoke, they're not in the elites.
No, you're in that discussion no matter what your name is. You have to
with
get
Jim
there.
Harbaugh, he gets them there. Again, 2 10-win seasons. They only had 1 with Brady Hoke and Rich Rod over 7 years. I don't think they're going to get rid of Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, by the way,
no, they're not going to get rid of him. Yeah. Don't yell at me.
There's no
Whitlock.
hot seat.
They
text Whitlock back and tell him to get
open with Notre Dame. You win that game,
yeah.
this discussion ends.
If you don't, it's going to keep moving.